Hey everyone, welcome back. You are listening to 한국어천재 on TBS EFM 101.3 in Seoul and the surrounding areas. It is a rainy Monday evening, but don't worry, we're going to make it bright and happy here at Food Talk with Chef Matthew. Hi, Chef Matthew.
Hi.
It's so great to have you back here because last week we were covering a whole bunch of stuff regarding, summer and keeping things cool. And he surprised me here with this historical knowledge that I never heard of. It was really fun last week.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So we decided to continue talking about those kind of cold, cool, refreshing foods of the summer. And wouldn't you know it, the weather's doing its job, our job for us anyway.
I know. That's the genius of it. I feel like the weather is like, we're going to cooperate with Matt's show today. We want to make sure we're helping him out here with it. So it decided to pour all day.
They have it up for us.
I'm glad you got here safely, though. That was the big thing.
Yeah, it was a little touch and go there for a second, but made it by the skin of my teeth.
Yeah, me as well. I mean, I know a lot of people these days have been or today especially has been struggling with the traffic here. I personally came in I had a shopping bag with me today and it was made of paper, and just as I was walking in the door here at TBS, it ripped completely open. Thankfully, it was in the lobby, so nothing got broken or anything. But what a day today for everyone here in Seoul. But today we're not going to be talking about the rain per se. We're going to keep talking about these refrigeration techniques that Korea has finagled and MacGyvered in here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because keeping cool is something that I think Korea has done really, really well. As, everyone here can attest, the weather is unbelievably unpredictable and it swings on all the extremes. So while we're thankfully not experiencing that today, Korea, as you know, gets unbearably hot.
Yeah. No, you guys, I'm sure some of you are from tropical locations, so you are already familiar with this. But for people like myself who are from Wisconsin, where there is zero humidity and we rarely get above like 25 degrees, 26 degrees Celsius, and it's just usually snow is the problem for us, not the heat. This was like coming into the oven, like just being roasted slowly. And so it can be extremely hot here, and especially like when you're just dying of the heat, all you want is something cool and refreshing to get all that sweat out with.
Yes, and that is one of the things I really do love about Korean cuisine is because it's something that you don't really see outside of Asia. And I think in Korea we have it almost like a larger kind of like incidence of eating cold dishes as part of our diet. So it's something that I really love. And it's something that would have been tough for most of history. I mean, because if you think about it, how do you keep stuff cold without electricity?
Honestly, what you covered last for our new listeners here, we were talking about soybean and dongbingo, right? Yeah. So these two areas in Seoul here were apparently where they kept the, what would I call it? The royal stash of ice?
Yeah, the ice stash. Yeah, the ice warehouses.
That's a much more polite way of saying it. The royal stash. I make it sound like it's some covert operation here. But yeah, they just had this system that Matt told us about last week. So if any of you are interested, make sure to tune in to last week's show on Papbang or iTunes or the podcast there, Naver audio clip. You can check it out. But it was really cool how the whole air control flowing system of like the wind would come in and constantly refreeze and melt so that they had ice almost all year.
It was incredibly ingenious. And, so this was a system that they had into place until around 1896. And they shut it down because at that point, then technology started to step in.
Oh, yeah. Technology. Yep. What did we get to then?
Well, at that point, then we were still working with ice. We didn't really have refrigeration units per se like we do today.
Yeah.
And so because people were able to figure out how to make ice in factories year round, by using these machines, they, got rid of the system. And then all of a sudden, ice started becoming a lot more common, not just for the royal family, but for everybody. And so from this point till about the mid 20th century, people would get ice delivered to them. And so these ice shops, they are generally the same ones who would also sell things like fuels, like kerosene for lamps, because you need that fuel to run the machines to freeze the ice. And so you get these people who would bring these, straw-lined wagons, or some of them will even kind of bring it on their little backpacks and bring it to your house. And you do what you picture to be like those old-timey ice boxes.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. Wait, so did I know this is kind of going back here, but your family as well, when they were living here in Korea and stuff, what did they have exactly in their house? Was it something similar to this, or did it kind of improve since that time there? What was your family situation?
So because of the other things going on in the country, let's call it that.
Other things, yeah.
Right, refrigeration didn't kind of go on the same timeline that it did in the West.
Yeah.
Like for example, like in the U.S. during this time, refrigeration was introduced in like the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And then slowly over time, kind of like flat screen TVs or other types of luxuries, it started becoming more and more adopted. Here in Korea, because of certain very large tumultuous events.
Yes.
It kind of like it didn't really happen for the everyday house. And then in like the 50s and 60s, like boom.
Just
then at that point, then it started becoming much more common. So prior to this, what my mother remembers the most is they would get deliveries of things like aisukeki.
Oh my gosh, so cute. I remember us talking about these, the aisukeki. For those who are listening here, what is an aisukeki?
So they're ice cream bars, but not quite ice cream. They're more, I think, what a lot of people call ice milk. So very, very icy. You kind of chew them. It's not creamy and soft and luscious like ice cream is, but it is still very refreshing.
Yeah.
With the most common flavor, of course, being pat.
Yeah.
Red bean.
What? Oh, I cannot stand pot. Oh no, that's one of my
I
top.
don't know if we can be friends.
I'm so sorry, but
Wait, pot
it's
in any form?
I don't all forms of pot I've eaten so far I have not enjoyed, and that is a lot of pot. That came out wrong, but that was like there's a lot of different types that I have tried, and I haven't enjoyed it inside of bread. I haven't enjoyed it in kind of what I want to say tteok. I don't like it in ice cream. So far, I've yet to encounter it in a way that I like.
What about savory applications like pat kalguksu?
I have not had that.
That might change your mind. That might be the kind of bridge that gets you from eating red bean as like a savory dish to eating red bean as a sweet thing, because I think that's the mental block that a lot of people have to get over is that beans don't usually equal sweet for a lot of cultures.
Yeah,
but open your mind, girl.
I know, I'm trying so hard, you guys. I always try red bean whenever it's in front of me because I'm like, maybe this will be the one. But I've yet to find the one. So.
Anyway, now they think much lesser of you. So during this time too, you have aisukeki, which I think is much more of a nostalgic throwback thing nowadays. You see it in kind of a lot of the old school bangchip, like the old school bakeries out here. I think that's probably where you see them most often. But I think another dish from this time that still remains extremely popular is, of course, bingsoo.
Oh gosh, you guys, my love this is like the extremities here. We were talking about the aisukeki and how I don't like the red bean flavor there, but man, when it comes to bingsoo, my love of bingsoo has no bounds.
Sure.
I could eat that every day. I've ordered it in winter. I love it that much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's one of the reasons why you see like dedicated bingsoo cafes nowadays, and most even non-dedicated bingsoo cafes will oftentimes have at least one on their menu.
Oh yeah,
they're phenomenal. And during this time, just much like the American ice cream truck, this was sold from a back of a truck as well.
Which is so cute to think of. Can you imagine like there's like little ice cream truck coming by, but it gives you your shaved ice? That's so cute.
I think it's almost a universal thing, right? People selling treats from back of a truck and kids running out and wanting to grab some.
That was me. We had one that would go around our subdivision, except obviously did not sell bingsoo. I wish it did, but we had one that would come around our neighborhood once a week, and I feel like you would see hordes of children chasing this truck down the street.
Right. And so, before they got their own refrigeration unit, these things would be delivered to them, like the ice and the whatnot. But say if they just wanted to chill something down.
Yeah.
While, again, they didn't have the refrigerator, what they would do, they would go much more, I guess, like old school and primitive. And they would basically take a large hangari, like a large, earthenware crock.
Yeah.
Or if you lived by like a river or a creek, they would put water, and then they would put a aluminum or stainless steel pot in there. And then they would put their oi냉국 or their, or say like their like 백김치
Yeah.
or their fruit that they wanted to chill. And that's how they kind of chill things like on a day-to-day basis, like in the summertime.
So not like a long term
No,
per se, but
no.
just like a daily basis kind of, we just need this cooled off a little bit.
It wouldn't necessarily be something that was like frosty cold, but it would still chill it down enough so that it would be refreshing compared to, say, eating it room temperature.
Exactly, which I think is just fascinating to see the history and the thought that went back, before we had such refrigeration units and such complexities and technology improving like that. Just the way they managed to get that to work in these hot temperatures. It's crazy. And we got some messages in here. Reese Jade, oh my goodness, says, I've never tried bingsoo before. I find them expensive. And Grassy says, bingsoo is something like shaved ice, question mark? Yeah,
That's
I would
correct.
say that's exactly how we describe it as shaved ice. It's usually made with kind of a milky ice kind of flavor to it.
Yes, I know we alluded to this during our vegan episodes, but a lot of the times the ice itself is made from either a milk and water blend or straight up milk.
Yeah.
So something to be careful of.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you have so many different types of bingsoo nowadays, not just in terms of topping, but in terms of the shaved ice itself. There is this like incredible kind of gold rush to create like the perfect shaved ice.
I know.
So you have the ones that come out looking like noodles.
Oh, I've seen that one.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen that
right,
one.
right.
My favorite was the one I had this when I went to Jeju, and it was I love mango. So I went to this place that had it, and it came out in this circular golden dish with a top. And when you lifted the lid, it had dry ice in the center. So this whole cloud of dry ice billowed out, and then it was almost like a layers of different levels of melted and frozen shaved ice and different consistencies of milk in there. And on the top, they sliced mangoes, just thick slices of mangoes on there. It was probably the best mango bingsu I've ever had in my life. I wish I could hongbo, but I cannot. So.
I was going to take offense to Reese Jade's comment about them finding them expensive, but I think you've just proven their point.
I
That
did.
sounds extremely extravagant.
It was very extravagant, well worth it. But I will say you can definitely find some more affordable options for
Right.
bingsoo if you wish to try it. That's our thing. But, I'm actually kind of wanting to stay on this topic here. I feel like I want to throw a quiz out to our listeners here. We had a quiz last week, and I thoroughly enjoyed talking about it. So let's give it a listen to our foods that do not have ice in it. Let's take a listen.
다음 중 얼음이 들어가지 않는 음식을 고르시오. 1번 콩국수 2번 팥빙수 3번 비빔냉면 4번 오이냉국
Oh my gosh, that ending again, once again, beam me up, Scotty. I've just been transported to the
It's
spaceship
either
here.
that or maybe it's a didgeridoo.
Yeah, what? Oh, the didgeridoo. Oh my gosh, I love those. Just picturing in the back, there's Matt.
And cute.
But okay, so what we were talking about here for the quiz is choose the food that does not have ice in it. Now, number 1, 콩국수, which is soybean noodles. Number 2, 팥빙수, which is sweet red bean bingsu or shaved ice. Number 3 is 비빔냉면, which is spicy cold noodles. And number 4 is 오이냉국, which is cucumber cold soup, I guess you could say, or like a chilled cucumber soup here.
Yeah. And keep in mind that these are all cold dishes, but we're picking the one that doesn't have like actual chunks of ice in it.
Yes. So that's the one that we are picking here. So I want to hear your answers. Make sure to send us a message for 51 to hashtag 1013 here. But you and I, we actually know the answers to this one.
Sure.
Here.
So why don't we talk about maybe some other cold dishes in the meantime, just
Yeah.
to give our genies a chance to
Yeah.
be able to answer.
So I'm thinking for me, when I think of cold dishes here in Korea, I often think of those like chilled soups that we get as well, because that was something I don't often associate with, what do I say, Western foods and
Right,
stuff.
right.
When we eat soup, we talked about this last week. I often think of like a grilled cheese and a tomato soup
Sure.
or a chicken noodle, like a hot piping soup. But here in Korea, you can actually get cold soups, and we have words that refer specifically to that as well, like those spicy cold soups. We don't use like 맵다 usually for it. We use like 얼큰하다 to describe it because it's a cold spice sort of thing. So it's interesting how the language has formed around that.
Right, like 매콤하다, I think it'd be a difficult one to use for a cold soup, but something like 칼칼하다.
Ooh.
Yeah, like something that's very like sharp. Kind of like it's that spice that hits you in the back of the throat.
Yeah, right here where it kind of makes your eyes water a little bit from it because it's so, just kind of hits in that one spot you're not comfortable with. Oh, we got some messages coming in here. Now, Tris says 1 or 3, 1 being soybean noodles or 3 being spicy cold noodles. Vroomi here says 1 maybe the soybean noodles. Mochi also says number 1, the kongguksu. It's interesting. As you might know from our reactions here, we're like,
Yeah, maybe we'll read them out one more time.
Yes.
1 being kongguksu, 2 being bingsoo, 3 being bi빔냉면, 4 being 오이냉국.
That's right. Yeah. So one more time, everyone take a real good think about this one. We want to see which one does not have ice in it. 얼음이 들어가지 않은 음식 고르셔요. So I want to hear what you guys have to say. But for me personally, I know what this is here. But I feel like we should break some of these down because there are a lot of cold summer foods that we have here. And cucumbers is a big thing in the summer here in Korea.
Yeah.
We actually talked last week with Suyeon about how they use cucumber pecks to get rid of, like, what do I want to call it, sunburn and things like that. So it's kind of like, I just associate it with summer all the time. Cucumbers and summer go together like PB&J.
It's one of those vegetables I think that taste extra good when they're cold. I think it's that crispness. They're mostly water. If you think about it, like I think cucumbers are kind of almost like the vegetable version of watermelon.
Yeah.
In just the sense that, it's just kind of like crispy and juicy.
The watermelons of the vegetable world. I love it. AD here says, cold noodles might not contain ice since it's cooled by cold water. Well, I feel like we've given our genies enough time here, so we should get to it before we run out of time. Well, if we're going to break this down here, let's start with that popular choice, the soybean noodles or the kongguksu.
Right.
Now, would you say that kongguksu has ice in it or not to start it off?
I would say sometimes it doesn't, but most oftentimes it does, especially when you have it home. I feel like homemade versions are much more likely to have ice in them, whereas I think the ones that you get from a restaurant or a place that specializes in kongguksu, they will tend to have like a thicker, almost like a soy cream rather than just like a thickened soy milk.
It reminds me of like a pasta sauce almost kind of.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of times you do see that with ice in them again, and with cucumber as well, because again, they have that cooling summer effect. But I think number 1 might not be the right answer just because, again, maybe the way that you have it at home might be a little bit different, but most of the times it's known to have ice in it.
I agree. Yeah. kongguksu, every time I have eaten it, it does have ice in it. So unfortunately for Tris and Vroomi and Mochi, it is not number 1. But then that leaves us to bingsoo, the sweet red bean bingsoo. And I feel like you all know we already gave the answer away for that.
I mean, it's like literally shaved ice.
Yeah. I mean, cannot get much more ice into the shaved ice. So that one is clearly got the ice in it there. Shaved ice is bingsoo. So that's leaving us with 2 options here, the bi빔냉면 and the 오이냉국 here. And so one more time, bi빔냉면 is spicy cold noodles, where if you had just 물냉면, that would be just like cold noodles, cold like water, I guess.
Yeah,
noodles.
literally translated to like cold water noodles, but it's referring to like a broth, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's a 동치미 broth, so like kind of like a winter kimchi broth. Sometimes it's a beef broth. Most oftentimes it's a combination of the two.
Yeah.
And this one, it's known to have these big glaciers of ice in it. However, we're not talking about 물냉면 right now.
No, we are not
here.
here.
We are talking about 비빔냉면.
Exactly.
And of course, there are places that are an exception. I've seen places that will say because most 냉면 places will serve both, right?
Exactly,
물냉면 and 비빔냉면. So there are places I've seen will take kind of chunks of their frozen 물냉면 broth and add them to the bi빔냉면.
I have seen that, yeah.
But that is the exception and not the rule.
Correct. I would agree with that as well. And look, some of our genies did get it. Noah says, I said it! It's number 3. Noah, you are a winner here. 10 points to you. That was awesome. Bea also gets a gold star. It's number 3, she says. So you are both correct. Yes, as Matt here is saying, we actually do have some exceptions to that rule, which is why when I first read this as well, I was like, well, I've had bi빔냉면 with chunks of ice in it. It's that kind of frozen chunks of that 물냉면 broth. But again, as he says, that's generally not the standard for it. That's more of like, oh, you got not a nice place you got there. So but that 오이냉국 usually comes with chunks of ice in it, doesn't it?
Right. And this one is a very, very simple broth. It has cucumber in there. Oftentimes like miak as well, like a type of seaweed. And then some was a little bit of sesame seed in there. And then they'll generally have ice, and it's you eat it kind of like almost like as a banchan, like during the summer months. When I talked to my mom about the cold foods that she remembers growing up with, like this is the one that she remembers most fondly.
It would be the 오이냉국 one.
오이냉국.
Yeah.
It's like I think it was their quintessential like summertime cool down dish. That or like 비빔면, which is similar to 비빔냉면. So for our listeners out there, if you want to kind of picture what these dishes are, you might probably know bibimbap. Right, so it's
Very
a
famous.
rice that you mix with the gochujang-based sauce. Same thing with bi빔냉면 and 비빔면, which is more often made with a wheat noodle.
And it is delicious. I have to say, before we go here, if I could recommend any summer hot or hot weather cold food here in Korean. For me personally, I always lean towards the 물냉면, the bi빔냉면, or even the 메밀국sus.
Sure.
I'm very big fan of buckwheat noodles, so I often go towards that direction there. But what about you, Matt? Do you have one for our listeners that you highly recommend?
Well, like we were saying before, like I think you had bi빔냉면, and that could be a little challenging because, again, for people not familiar with Korean cuisine, cold noodles, kind of weird. But the buckwheat noodles that go into naengmyeon can be a little bit more challenging. So if you go with bibimbap, the one that's made with somyeon, with the white wheat noodles, that could be a little bit more accessible. Oftentimes it's a little sweet as well. And so there's bibimbap or makguksu.
True.
Would be kind of like my gateway cold noodle choices.
That's great. And thank you so much, Matt, for joining us today. I had so much fun with you as always.
As did I.